Hey guys, welcome back. I cannot believe this is a second video that you're going to see from me in 2 weeks, I think. I don't know when I'm going to post this, but actually I'm filming this straight after my get ready with me, so you know, I have a bit of time before I need to leave and I'm hoping to get this video done. I wanted to talk about my favorite eyeshadow palettes. I have so many in my collection now. Not as much as a lot of other YouTubers and bloggers, but you know, who's comparing? But I have about, I don't know, maybe 40 or 50 palettes that I have in my collection, drugstore and high-end. I do find that I really never reach for any of my drugstore eyeshadows, ever actually, except for ColourPop ones, which I'm going to talk about actually, but I don't like the quality of my drugstore eyeshadow palettes compared to what I have in my high-end collection, and I really don't wear makeup all the time, so when I do wear makeup I tend to wear it for events, functions, weddings, parties, whatever, and I tend to want to, I use the stuff that I really do like. So I've actually decluttered a lot of my collection, and I don't have one drugstore palette now, which is the Sleek Ultra Matte V2 palette, and it's the darker shades of the matte eyeshadows that they have. They have two of those palettes, and I absolutely love that palette. It's got some stunning colours. The pigmentation is intense. I don't have that with me to show you because I don't really use that one all the time. I use that for accent colours. But all of these are more on the higher end palettes. So I don't want this video to be too long, so I'm just going to go straight into it. I have to talk about these palettes first because I think these are my absolute die-hard favourite palettes, formulas, everything. These are by Dose of Colours. I have 3 of them here: the Blushing Berries, Sassy Siennas and Baked Browns. My favourite of the 3 is the Blushing Berries. I'm always drawn to this. I always try and use this whenever I can. You can create amazing looks. You can create whole looks with this. You can use this as just an accent palette. But their formula is just brilliant. So I know there's loads of people who don't like these palettes because of the kickback you get from the eyeshadow palette. But like, I think it's really important to know that these eyeshadows are so pigmented. There is kickback, but you have to use the tiniest amount of product. So if you're going to dig your brush into this, it will fly out everywhere. If you just tap into the brush, so I'm actually going to use a little bit of this middle shade here, and I'm literally just going to tap my brush in once. You saw that, just once. And I'm going to add that onto my lower lash line. I don't know if you can see that coming on. I've already got my makeup on, so I don't really need to add more makeup. But I went in there once. Okay, I went in there twice. Second time around just to show you. But I've literally just tapped onto the eyeshadow really softly, and I'm coming onto my lower lash line. And the colours come off. Like, there is payoff on my actual eyes. Now my eyelids, under eyes are heavily pigmented. I've got really bad dark circles, so a lot of eyeshadows don't even show up, even if I've got a really good neutralizing base on. And when an eyeshadow shows up, it's good. It's really good because it's pigmented enough to show up on my eyes, and I use the slightest amount. I've seen people, like, you know, swirl their brush into these eyeshadows and it kicks up a lot and they get a lot of fall down. That is going to happen when you do it that way. You don't need to do that. If you use it, I don't want to say correctly because there is no right or wrong, and I'm definitely no authority on any of this, but if you just touch your brush really gently into the eyeshadow palette, you will see just how amazing these palettes are. So if you don't love them, if you haven't had good experience with them, try them. Absolutely try them. They're amazing. I prefer matte eyeshadows to shimmer, so I'm drawn to these because of that. They're all matte, all of them. Sorry, my phone's going off. So that's the first palette, that's the Blushing Berries. This black is so intense. I'm gonna take my brush, one swipe, and I'm just gonna show you how intense that is. I don't know if you can even see that on camera. Okay, it's clearly not coming up as intense on camera, but I am going to show you again. I'm just going to layer that slightly, which I think is a fair representation, because with blacks, it's kind of better to have them intense once you layer them so you don't make a mess of things. But that's how intense it is, and that was with a brush. And it will build more than that. These eyeshadows are just amazing. But anyway, that was the Blushing Berries. And then we have the Baked Browns and the Sassy Siennas. And I'm just going to show you them side by side, because I do get asked if you need both. I mean, do we really need more than one palette? I don't know. But these two are different. So I'm just going to show you them side by side. And hopefully I don't drop these, because that would break my heart. But that is a Sassy Siennas, which is a little bit more orange than the Baked Browns. So the Baked Browns are described as warm toned browns. On my skin tone, which is super warm, I don't find them to be as warm as the Sassy Siennas, which is why for me both of them work, and I use them both for different things. So I found that the Baked Browns have a little bit more of a neutral to neutral warm kind of tone on my skin, which I like, and the Sassy Siennas are just straight up orangey warm browns. But like I said, absolute favorite palettes, especially for matte eyeshadows, my absolute favorite formula. And then my other kind of go-to palette for travel especially, or if I'm doing a client and I want to have a really condensed kit, I tend to go for these smaller palettes. These are the Huda Beauty palettes. My most used by far are the Mauve Obsessions, Warm Brown Obsessions and Topaz. I tend to, for the same reason that I like the Dose of Colours, I like palettes with more matte shades. You know, so many palettes have brilliant shimmer shades, but I find matte eyeshadows quite difficult to work with on my eyes, especially my eyelids. But this is the Warm Browns. This is one of my favourite Huda palettes. It's got surrounding matte shades, so there's 3, 6, 8 matte shades, and the centre shade is shimmer, and it's a beautiful bronzy gold shade. That is one that I absolutely love, and then of course the Mauve palette as well. But what I do find is, say I've got, when I'm seeing clients, I do tend to, if I'm not doing a trial beforehand, I tend to get them to send me a picture of their outfit or whatever they're going to wear and the kind of look that they want. And if, you know, somebody says, I want a blue smoky eye or green smoky eye, whatever, I do tend to take one of these palettes. So the sapphire one's already in my kit for a client, but like the amethyst or the ruby or emerald, and I find these work really well. So when I've got, you know, specific needs for color, I tend to take these. But for myself, most used would be the Warm Browns and the Mauve Obsessions palette. And then that's it really for the smaller ones. I do have this Natasha Denona Mini Sunset palette, which is what I've actually got on my eyelids today. And I've actually really just used this shade and this one here, and then I've gone into my Soft Glam palette as well for a bit of deepening on the eyelid. But I tend to take this with me when I know somebody wants a traditional Indian makeup look. You can't go wrong with this palette. It's brilliant. I don't want to get the big palette because it just didn't appeal to me, but this little one definitely did appeal, and I don't regret it. People say that it's not as good in formula as the larger palettes. Don't own any of the larger palettes. I do have these two, the 5-pan palettes. I don't really find a difference in formula as such. Still very pigmented, easy to blend. They're a little bit crumbly compared to these, but you know, I'm okay with that. It just means that they're pigmented and they're really creamy to blend. So it doesn't bother me. The payoff is good, and the effect that I get on my eyelids is just as good. So for me, I don't have the bigger palette to compare with, so in its own right, I actually think it's a really great palette. Okay, so for the larger palettes, the first palette that I absolutely do have to talk about, and I think this is being talked about so much on social media that I'm just going to have a brief word on it, but it's the Urban Decay Born to Run palette, and that's this one here. Love the packaging. I love the fact that it comes with an absolute giant mirror, which is filthy, but it's a really good quality mirror. But the best thing about it is I think it's pretty much got any shade that I would ever need. It's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 matte shades, 8 matte shades. And I'm actually glad it's got a black in here. The black is really, really black, good quality black, which I love. And I feel like a palette like this needs a black because it 100% is a standalone palette. But it's got the accent shades that I would always use. Like I use blues, greens, purples, and it's got all of that. This blue is more of like a greyish blue, which is not my favorite, I'll admit. I would have preferred a navy blue, but it is a colour that I've used. I created a smoky eye with that look, with that eyeshadow, and it's turned out stunning. I mean, I don't think there's any single eyeshadow in here that shouldn't be here. I think this is a perfect palette, and if you're somebody that's looking to buy just one palette, good quality palette, one that will last you a long time, one that will allow you to create absolutely any look that you want, this is the palette I would 100% recommend. Especially because it has the black. You literally don't need anything else. You can use the black to create your liner. It's got the dark shades for transitions. It's got the lighter shades for highlighting shades over the full eyelid color shades. Like, it's got everything you would need. So 100% probably the best standalone palette that I own. Yeah, I can safely say that. Then the other palettes that I'm going to talk about, and again, these are so highly talked about on social media for good reason, but they're the Anastasia Beverly Hills Modern Renaissance and Soft Glam palette. This is a newer addition to my collection. I wasn't sure I was going to get it, and then in the end I did. And again, I'm really glad I did. And what I find is when I need a standalone palette, I go for the Soft Glam because of the black. It has all the shades that I would need in terms of the matte brown shade range. And the shimmers in this are just stunning. The sultry shade is one that I have used many, many times. And you don't need a lot of these. You don't need to dig in hard with this palette either. But that shade is so, so beautiful. You can create really great smoky eye with this look. It can be used on its own over the entire lid with 1 or 2 of the transition shades. It is beautiful, and you can create everyday makeup looks with this. You can create glam looks with this. You can create the in-between look. This is another great palette. The Modern Renaissance palette I tend to use more for when I'm doing makeup for Indian outfits. I use this for Indian bridals. I use this for just generally Indian wear more than anything else. But it's one that I always have in my kit if I'm doing Indian makeup client work. Yeah. I mean, these two are really great palettes anyway. Anastasia Beverly Hills eyeshadow palettes are really great. They do have a very soft formula, which means if you dig in hard again with your brush, you'll get a lot of kickback in the palette. If you don't tap off your brush with the excess powder, you're going to get a lot of fall down. But they do blend very, very easily. They're very pigmented. They do last a very long time. I find that you do need a good primer with these. On my eyelids especially, they will fade very, very quickly, very easily if I don't have a primer. But with a primer, I have no complaints with this palette. I mean, I think for high-end palettes, that is all that I want to talk about. I do have a few here in front of me that I like. I love, not like actually, but I wouldn't use it all the time because I find that they're more, I don't know, you got to be in the mood for these kind of eyeshadows. One I'm talking about is the Desert Dusk by Huda. It does remind me of the Modern Renaissance, but it's a little bit more, I don't know, I want to say more artsy. I do love this palette. I find that when I want to get really creative, just go nuts with my makeup, create an eyeshadow look that would never wear out because I prefer wearing neutral out. I tend to use this, and if I have a client who says just go ham with my makeup, I do tend to pull this one out. But for myself, it is not one that I use often. I do try and use this to just get creative with, really. But the formula is good. I don't think it's great, unfortunately. I think that the other palettes that I've spoken about have a better formula. It's not bad, not at all. But I just feel like the other palettes are better. And actually, when it comes to the Huda Beauty palettes, I think a lot of people on YouTube, a lot of reviews say that the larger palettes are better. I actually prefer the smaller palettes. I find that the formula is easier to work with. I don't know, I just find the smaller palettes better. I'm glad I got this palette. I don't regret buying this. Like I said, I don't use it often, but I don't regret buying it. I do love the color range in it. Just allows me to get more creative with my makeup. So for the affordable range, and the affordable range really is my Colourpop palettes. My absolute favorite palette of the lot is this one. This is the Perception palette, and it's the collaboration with Shayla and Colourpop. Some people say this is a dupe for the Born to Run palette. There might be some color similarities, but I don't know, I don't find it to be exactly the same. I don't find it to be a dupe. I adore this palette. I love the shades in this. I particularly love the shade Stallion, which is like a midnight blue with blue glitter. It is so, so beautiful. Right, let me just pack that on so you can get the full effect of it. I mean, this has been around for a while, so I'm definitely new to the game with this. But isn't that stunning? Like, I love this. I absolutely love this palette. I love that shade in particular. Formula is great, as it is with all the other Colourpop palettes. Pigmented, creamy, buttery, blends well, applies easily, lasts a long time. I do need a base with this, like I do with every other eyeshadow palette. But this palette, I'm so glad I have it in my collection now. Because I have the Born to Run palette, I never really thought about getting this because of the claim of it being a dupe. And then what happened, I just bit the bullet and I bought it. I'm so glad. I love this palette. The other Colourpop palette that I like, I do have two others, but this is the one that I reach for most often from the other ones, and this is the Dream Street palette by Kathleen Lights and Colourpop. And it's got some really unique shades. This one in particular, this shade here, which I don't even know if you can see it on camera. Let me just swatch it for you. This shade is so stunning. It's a duochrome shade. It's got a hint of peach and green almost, like a lime green, pistachio green kind of shade. I don't know, it's so stunning. And I've used this over another green eyeshadow. I've used this to create basically a duochrome look on the eyelid where I wanted a bit of silver and some green, and this eyeshadow actually worked brilliantly for that. The other shade that I really like is this matte shade here. It's not patchy, it actually applies really well. That's the swatch of it on my finger, but it goes on so smoothly. It's a little bit dusty, but that's okay. But it's not patchy at all. It's so smooth to apply with. And yeah, I really like it. Really like it. And so yeah, that's the second affordable palette that I like. This has a lot more neutral shades in it compared to the Perception palette. In terms of the browns, and even the shimmers are a lot more neutral to wear, which is probably why I like it a lot. The other palette that I had in my collection was the Double Entendre palette, which again is very neutral. I do like it, but the other two are definitely ones that I reach for a lot more. So that is the rundown of my most used, most loved palettes from my collection. I have this huge thing here which is filled with palettes, and I actually have another 2 or 3 more of these which I kind of use but not so much. I am going to declutter those eventually, but these are the palettes that I do kind of reach for a lot more, and the ones that I talked about are the ones that I reach for all the time. But yeah, I hope that helps you in terms of choosing eyeshadow palettes, especially if you're new to makeup or you want, you know, 1 or 2 palettes in your collection and not like the 510 that we have, which is totally unnecessary. But yeah, I hope this helps you to choose a palette that you like, a palette that you could maybe use for a long time. And yeah, hope you enjoyed this. I love doing this video. I love going through my palettes just to see which ones I actually do use. It's quite easy actually to pick them out because I realised actually those are the ones that I do grab all the time. But yeah, hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Hit the bell to stay notified of when I post, and I will see you all next time.